Well, let's sing together. Jaya, you know the song? Do you know the song? Okay, but you know the song. Jaya Radha Madhava. Can I get you a sheet? You know where it is? Okay. Are you together or you just happen to come? No? Okay. Is this your first time for the...
No, I came here, my sweet mom, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I thought I recognized you. Sorry about the heat, or lack of it. We're actually working on getting the heating in.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the climate has changed. It never got this cold, even in winter. When I've been here 30 years.
It wasn't that cold here?
No, not. Yeah, but I mean, it was no way like this when I first came in the 90s and even the early 2000s. Climate change. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Can you move over? Move over, because he's going to sit there. Sorry, you can take a book and everything. Just take a whole setup. Marcy will take care of you. She's got behind you. Yeah. No, you're still not far. That's the men's side. Sorry. Usually we have a lot of men and very few women.
Okay, so I can move.
No, you don't need to move. You can just take it. Yeah, get another mat. We didn't set up enough mat for the ladies. Usually we have one lady, 2 ladies. Now it's like vast majority of the students here are the ladies here. What's going on? Okay, we're going to read from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Sorry. We practice Parda. Have you heard of it? I discovered a new word. All right, you sit there. Okay. And if other men come, they'll just have to sit over here on this side. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we're on page 101. On this 7th day of January 2019, in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2 entitled, Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 33. Atachetvam imam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi atachetvam imam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi atachetvam imam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Go ahead, Marcy. Atachetvam imam dharmyam sangramnam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Anyone on this side want to try it? Okay, go ahead, Jamal. Atachetvam imam dharmyam sangramnam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Okay, I'll read the word by words and you can follow along. Ata, therefore, chait, if tvam you imam this dharmyam as a religious duty, sangramam, fighting, do not karishyasi, perform, tataha, then, swadharmam, your religious duty, kirtim, reputation, cha, also, hitva, losing, papam, sinful reaction, avapsyasi, you will gain. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, if, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Purport. Arjuna was a famous fighter, and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received as a reward a weapon called the Pashupata Astra. Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him the special weapon by which he could kill even his teacher. So he, Arjuna, was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, including his adoptive father Indra, the heavenly king. But if he abandoned the battle, not only would he neglect his specific duty as a Kshatriya, but he would lose all his fame and good name, and thus prepare his royal road to hell. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting, but by withdrawing from the battle. Om Jnana Timirandasya, Jnana Anjana Shalakaya, Chakshu Unmidatam Mena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this section, beginning with 31 and going on through 37 is an interesting interlude here. Hare Krishna, welcome Rami. Because Krishna has already given a full lesson on the soul, the difference between the soul and the body. The 20 verses, beginning with 2:11, he began his instruction to Arjuna. And immediately, he raised the platform of discourse above the bodily concept. Arjuna, the whole first chapter, it's a very dramatic scene. They're on the battlefield, and they're between the two armies, and Arjuna sees on the other side, on his own side, so many of his friends, relatives, worshipable guru, and suddenly he realizes he's going to be responsible, largely responsible for their deaths. He's the main fighter on the side of virtue, and suddenly he gets cold feet. He doesn't want to do his duty, his swadharma. The word swadharma is here in this verse that we read. And that's also mentioned in text 31. So the swadharma is your own duty that you have as a certain member of society. Generally, you have these four classes of the administrators and warriors, and then you have the Brahmins at the top. who engage in intellectual work, and the fighters and administrators, what we call, they have a natural charisma, leadership, natural leaders. And you have the Vaishyas who can make money, either by agriculture, by trade, by banking somehow. And you have the Shudras, manual laborers. This is the general society. And your Swadharma is where you're situated within that, what your natural aptitude is and how you're engaged. So the smooth working of society, it's important that everyone know his Swadharma and follow his Swadharma. And there's so many rules and regulations in the Vedas of what you can do and what you can't do. So Arjuna was ready to give up his Swadharma in the first chapter and go and become a beggar. Anything but to be, to kill my friends and relatives and the worship of Bhishma Dev, and even the sons of Dhritarashtra he had a lot of affection for, even though they tried to kill them. But Krishna was having none of it. And Arjuna knew that deep in his heart, that not only was he violating his Swadharma, but he was violating the absolute Dharma. Beyond the Swadharma, Prabhupada explains nicely in the introduction, there is Sanatan Dharma, Bhagavad Dharma, which we all share as souls, and which has nothing to do with the physical body. Our Sanatan Dharma, eternal Dharma, is to be eternal servants of God. We've forgotten that. We're trying to serve ourselves, we're trying to serve our senses, or someone else, some other material entity in this world. But it's all very temporary, relative, and unsatisfying, ultimately. You can only serve your senses so much before your senses start giving you all kinds of pain. We've all had that experience just by, eating a couple too many cups of ice cream. It was good while it lasted, but then you got to pay the piper, right? There's a reaction to that. There's too much indulgence of the senses. So the Krishna is trying to raise Arjuna off of this bodily platform and bring him to the spiritual platform. So, but now, beginning in text 32, and now we just read text 33, actually beginning text 31, he's again speaking about Swadharma. And he says, even on the level of just doing your duty, if you leave the battlefield out of compassion, because there's no question of he's a coward. He's not a coward. He's not leaving because he's afraid to die. He's leaving because he's afraid to kill. He doesn't want to, that's most painful to him, that he would be responsible for killing Dronacharya and Bhishma. So, but still, to everyone else, it's going to look like you left because you're a coward. You'll lose your reputation. What could be more painful to you? You've been honored as the greatest warrior in the world, practically. And now it's going to look like you're a coward. You'll never live it down. So there's an interlude here where Krishna reverts back to like almost a material argument. He's giving from all different directions. And this is the last we'll hear of that kind of argument. Then the Bhagavad Gita stays on the completely spiritual platform. But it's interesting. There are many interesting little historical references here, and quickly Krishna will come out of this, and he'll talk about how you should fight just for the sake of fighting. In other words, just do your duty and leave the success or failure up to me. That's the ultimate, position of the devotee of Krishna. Is that for a devotee of Krishna, just the effort to succeed is already success, because you're doing Krishna's will, and the success or failure is up to Krishna. This is how Srila Prabhupada started this movement. We wouldn't be sitting here if he didn't have completely that faith, that if he had just tried to fulfill the order of a spiritual master, the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Krishna consciousness would be spread, that if he simply tried to do that, that would be, hold on, we'll have a question. Well, that would be success. And even though in the darkest days, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, when Prabhupada is on that freighter, he wasn't even on a passenger ship. You can imagine, and he was suffering from seasickness. He had 2 heart attacks, and he still wasn't discouraged. He felt completely that he was, meeting the desires of his spiritual master. He was well situated, and he had this dream where Krishna came and he was taking the oars of the boat and rowing, and he said, "Don't worry." And Prabhupada didn't. He said, if I had a 3rd heart attack, it would have been finished. Never had that 3rd heart attack. Came to America, and miraculously, with no money in his pocket, no friends, basically. Can you imagine? You know, most of us here have been, you've all been foreign countries, maybe, you know, you travel, you go places. Well, you want to make sure when you get to the other end, you know where you're going to, who's going to pick you up, where you're going to stay. You got your return ticket, you have all the security. Prabhupada had none of that. Just imagine going, you know, to a foreign country, and New York was like overwhelming. I mean, even the people who live there are overwhelmed. What to speak of just visiting there and having to live. I was just reading, there's this wonderful book by Mukunda Goswami. Mukunda Goswami was one of the original pioneers. Very fascinating story. He was an accomplished jazz musician. He had made it in New York City. He studied in Reed College, which is a very high-class college in the Northwest up there in Washington. And he became an accomplished musician. But he was also had, you know, interest in spiritual things, obviously. So he describes in this book, I just began it, I read it once, I'm reading it again. And that he went to this Swami and this yogi and this preacher, you know, and he was completely unsatisfied. And then he heard that right down the street from where he was living, in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, actually in the Bowery, they had these lofts you could get very cheap, you know, under $100 a month. Big space where you could do your big painting, you could have loud music, because no one was living there. They had been warehouses in there. So right down the street from where he was living, there was this Swami, guru, who was holding classes, and he was fascinated. And he climbs up the Bowery. You know, nowadays, we have homeless everywhere. Everyone knows that. In those days, if you were down and out on your luck and you just sort of gave up, you went to New York, you went to the Bowery. In other words, whether you could come from, you know, Colorado or Arizona or Mississippi, but you headed toward the Bowery. That was where you could find, you know, something. So that was where, you know, it was full of homeless people. I lived in New York. I knew that place. No one wanted to really live there if you could help it. But Prabhupada couldn't afford anything. He was dependent. So he's on this fourth floor walk up. You have to climb over the drunks, you know, to get into the place, you know. And there, so Mukunda Maharaj, Michael Grand, is climbing up there, you know, with a flashlight. And finally he hears the chink, 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 and bang, bang, bang of the kirtan. And there's Prabhupada under one light bulb in this vast space, you know, and there's 4 or 5 guys around him, you know, chanting Hare Krishna. And that was the situation Prabhupada was in. So he was, in other words, he had already succeeded just by giving his all to do that. And in the next 12 years, he succeeded beyond his wildest imagination. And that's why we're sitting here. So that's the difference between material effort and spiritual effort. Materialists would never invest in that, you know. In fact, his sponsor, his patron, who was a lady, she was running this shipping company, the SanDiego, that Prabhupada got free. She said, "You can't. I'm not going to give you free passage there. You're just going to go and die there. It's cold. You don't know anybody." She wouldn't give him passage. So Prabhupada had a sit-in. You know how the old they had to sit in? He sat outside her office in Bombay and he's chanting Hare Krishna. There's a picture of him sitting there, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He was determined. I said, okay, I guess she goes. And later when Prabhupada came back to India with a whole bunch of devotees, you know, she was like, wow, ecstatic, you know.
What was she denying?
Free passage on one of her ships. She thought he'd just die either on the ship, which he almost did, or when he got there. You know, he was 69, and it's turning 69 actually, and his health wasn't that great. You know, materially it looked like an impossible situation, but because he had Krishna behind him, it all came out successful. So this section now we'll read through it quickly here. In fact, we already read this this verse. I remember this idea of the adoptive father. Now, you have to at least raise your hand. So raise your hand. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. But then when you come back, could you move your seat on the outside? Because, no offense, but you tend to be a little restless in the class. And to avoid disrupting the others, you can. Perfect. But now you have to take the stand too. Give her the stand. Oh, not on the floor. Never on the floor. Hare Krishna. No offense. Okay, so let's go on. Text 34. Akirtim chapi bhutani katayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya chakirti manarad adirichite People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. The purport, both as friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, quote, okay, in the future, can we please turn all of this phones off? The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you do better to die in the battle. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battle. That will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battle and not withdraw. So the idea is they'll speak of his infamy. It'll look like he's leaving out of cowardice, although he wouldn't be. And so that will be worse than death. Text 35. Bhayad ranat uparatam. Hello. Bhayad ranat uparatam. Mansyante tvam maharataha. Yesham chatvam bohumato. Bhutvaya sasilagabam. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Purport. Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Do not think that the great generals like Duryodhana, Karna, and other contemporaries will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you've left out of fear for your life, and thus their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. Avachabadang Shabahun Vadishyanti Tabahitaha Nindantas Tabasamartyam Tato Dukkatadam Nukim. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Purport. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning at Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, and he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now in so many words he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion. Hatova prapsasi svargam jitbhava bhokshase mahim tasmad uttishta kaunteya Yudhaya Kutanishtayaha. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore get up with determination and fight. Purport. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For even being killed there, he could be elevated, could be elevated into the heavenly planets. So this is, you get the sense that this is kind of a standard argument for Kshatriyas who are having cold feet. Look, it's a win-win situation, because if you die in this righteous fight, you'll go to heaven. If you win, you'll enjoy the earthly kingdom. So how can you lose? But you have to believe in life after death, which of course they did in the Vedic culture. But you can see the argument for the Kshatriya. If he really is a true Kshatriya, then he's eager for a fight. And you find in the 18th chapter, when he finally describes the qualities of the Kshatriya, that's one of the main qualities. Yudhe chapya palayanam. He never flees from a fight. He's always ready to engage in the fight. Because he knows that it's righteous. If it's righteous, then I can't lose. Even if I'm killed, I'll go to heaven. So, but of course, there's nothing much transcendental about this. This is, good material heaven. So now at 38, and he's getting now into the mood of, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
What is this weapon he's been given, this special weapon?
Pashupata. I forget, but it's a Pashupata means something having to do with animals. I'd have to research it. I'm sorry, but it's part of the whole culture of the Mahabharata that he fights Shiva and he wins. Shiva's very pleased. I mean, this is the Kshatriyas. They're pleased when they're defeated by superior force, and then he gives him this special weapon that's invincible. And later on, what happens is that this is Bhishma Dev is really partial to the Pandavas, although he's on the other side. How did he get on the other side? Because he was broke, and Duryodhana supported him. So he felt that he had to fight on the side of Duryodhana. So at a certain point, Duryodhana says, oh, look, you're not fighting with your full energy. Bhishma Dev was the greatest fighter, actually, which is a great insult for a Kshatriya, that he has loyalties on the other side. So Bhishma said, okay, tomorrow I'll kill all the Pandavas with these special arrows that were given. They all had these special weapons. And you'll see that I'm, fighting with my full energy. Either that or Krishna will have to break his promise. But Krishna promised that he wouldn't fight in the battle. You remember? And so, so there was this whole scene where Arjun and Duryodhana go to see Krishna while he's sleeping, and they wanted to be there when he wakes up. It said that he had promised whoever he saw first, he would give them the choice of taking either his armies or himself. So Arjun was naturally at the foot of the bed, whereas Duryodhana was right at the head. But when Krishna woke up, he looked down, he looked at his feet, so he saw Arjun first. So Duryodhana said, oh. But Arjun said, well, I'll take you, I don't want the armies. So Duryodhana said, yeah, I'll take the armies, because he had no faith. So all of Krishna's armies are on the other side, but Krishna's on the side of Arjuna, and how can there be defeat? Wherever there is Krishna is going to be, and Arjuna is going to be. So, but Krishna promised, he said, I will not fight, yeah. He said it's just an arrow? Yeah, we just read it. No, a weapon. This is text 33 in the purport, right in the middle.
Yeah, I'm looking on database, but he said he presented him one arrow, which is called Pashupata Astra. He was looking at that.
Okay, because here it says it's a certain weapon. But anyway, it's like invincible. It's just one of the many things he had. So Krishna's not going to fight, and Arjun is relying on him. And now I kind of lost my train. All right, so where were we? 37 we read? 38. We're on 30, okay. Now we have a little more, we have a purport with this verse in it, important. Sukha dukke same kritva labha labha jaya jayo sato yudhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsasi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. Actually, we changed it to happiness or distress, gain or loss, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he, Krishna, desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or loss, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as one is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, okay, let's see if we can do it. I'll do it line by line. Devashi bhutapta nrinam patrinam nakinkado nayam rini charajan savatmanayak sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. Bhagavatam 11.541. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. Okay, you have a question? I'm not going to stop you. Go ahead. Just go around this way. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. You're welcome. So, this verse is a key verse. Prabhupada explains. We come into this world and actually we're debtors. We take everything for granted. The sun is shining, the water is flowing, you know, other people are manning their posts so that we can go to Trader Joe's and get something to eat. But actually, I mean, we breathe, all of these things, they're given to us. But behind each of them, there is a conscious person. There are demigods controlling the air and the water and the sun and everything. And the fact that we're taking advantage of it, this is explained in the 3rd chapter. We have to perform sacrifice. This is the whole culture where, you know, even in Vrindavan, the whole Govardhan Leela, we're sitting here in New Govardhan, commemorating the pastime, where Krishna said to his father, who was preparing to perform the yearly sacrifice to Indra, so the rains would come at the right time, and not too much and not too little. That's agriculture, right? You have to have water at the right time in order to... So naturally there's a real relationship with Indra, and in order to appease him and appreciate him, and there's the sacrifice. So the whole breaking of that, and you know, and Indra's getting angry and lifting over the hill, that showed that really you just need to worship Krishna. But otherwise, then you have to worship the demigods. That's in the 3rd chapter. Perform sacrifice. Otherwise, eventually we have what we have in the United States. For 200 years, which is a snap of a finger in you know, eternal time, 250 years, the United States has been very prosperous, you know, and doing all this thing. But you can see it's teetering and tottering. Right here we have, right here in SanDiego, we're feeling the weather change. You know, it's been colder than it's ever been since I've been here. But that's nothing compared to the drought, the ongoing drought in California. Where do you think those fires come from? The dry, you know, wood, you know, and all that, and the wind's coming, and then as soon as there's a spark, boom, it goes crazy. So the point is that we're at the mercy, we're taking every day the air and the water and the sunshine and the food and everything. And we're not even acknowledging where we're getting it from. So that's the meaning of this verse. There's a list here. Deva, Rishis, Bhutas, Aptas, Nirnams, Patrinams, and all of the, we're debtors. Rini means debtors. But if you surrender to the shelter of Mukunda, with your body, mind, and words, Sarvatmana, all of those debts are paid for. It's just like consolidating the one debt. You have all these different credit cards, and you consolidate one payment a month. So if you're surrendered to Krishna, and you're doing his work, then you don't have to worry about all these otherwise you do have to worry. So this is a very important point. So here Krishna is saying, don't worry about victory or defeat. That's not in your hand. You see, you simply fight because it's the duty. Ultimately you fight because I want you to fight, and it's the right thing to do. And leave the success or failure up to me. Now you can see the great advantage of that. If you're fully convinced that that is a fact, then you don't have to worry about the end result of what you're doing. Just the effort to serve Krishna in the proper way, in the proper time, is already successful. And that again, that this was Prabhupada's mood. And that's why being completely in the hands of Krishna, you know, I'm always, forgive me, but I grew up in a family, we used to listen to these spirituals. Does the name Mahalia Jackson mean anything to you? You know? You got the whole world in your hands. You got the... You ever hear that? That's it. She's a Christian. That's it. Yeah. So we used to listen to it on TV. Now we were atheists, you know, so we just liked the music. But now that's really what we're talking about. Krishna, you got the whole world. You've got me in your hands. Do with me whatever you like. Now you can see the freedom in that. If you really believe that, and you understand that you'll never die, you know, you're a spiritual being, then you can be completely happy and peaceful just doing Krishna's will, even if it's fighting a battle here or doing something seemingly impossible. So many things were done in this movement that seemed impossible. In the early days, Prabhupada sent one devotee, what was his name? Shivananda, I think it was named, to Germany to start ISKCON in Germany, to Hamburg. One devotee. I think he knew German, you know, from college. I knew German a little bit. I studied in high school. It's the equivalent. Oh, you go to Germany. What to do? He probably did what all he did, go out on the street and chant Hare Krishna. I mean, Vishnu Jan Swami was a legendary figure. You know, he was his whole life. But he, you know, he was very charismatic, a skilled musician. When he took sannyas, he got on a motorcycle and just went alone with no money or anything, I mean, just gas money, from California to Texas and sat down in Austin, where you have the main college there. Colleges are always, you know, you have young people who are, you know. And he just sat there and started chanting. And, you know, very skillfully with the drum, you can imagine. And people, you know, kids came and they sat around. It was like the 60s, 70s, you know, early 70s were part of the hippie era. And before you know it, people were, you know, a couple of people offered him a place to stay. He said, okay, stay. Started the whole ISKCON in Austin, and it's very flourishing. A lot of devotees came from there. So this was a, you know, you just surrendered. You surrendered the holy name. You feel protected. So that's what Krishna is beginning to say here. You don't worry, sukha dukkhe samay kritva, whether happiness, distress, labha, gain or loss, victory or defeat, you fight yudhaya for the sake of fighting, for the engagement. And naivam papam, you will never incur sin. This was another fear of Arjuna, that he would be responsible for the degradation of society. If all of these soldiers are killed and I'm responsible, what happens to their wives and kids? Suddenly they're out on the street, you know. Or there's, you know, many children are born who have no protection. And others. He saw that he would be responsible for a lot of degradation in society. That would be sinful reaction. He would dwell in hell. But here, in the previous purport, Prabhupada makes the point that he would go to hell. He would suffer sinful reaction by giving up the fight, not by fighting. Because the fight was Krishna's will. Prabhupada makes the point that if you're, you know, of course in America, God forbid anyone would ever have to go into the army. This was in the 60s, they were drafting people. You had to go. But if you were there and you killed some of the enemy, then you get a medal, you know, because it's authorized. But if you come back, you kill one man or one woman, you know, you get arrested, you get in jail for the rest of your life or even executed. So the whole point is because it's the desire of God that this battle take place in order to reinstate Dharma in the world. It's not that you know, there's some kind of revenge going on here. Krishna has no personal desire in this thing. He's already coming down from his kingdom. He's perfectly satisfied. But he's concerned that on the earth, that Dharma rule, that there really be virtue at the top, you know, and there wasn't. Things had gotten mixed up with Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. And the actual intended king, Yudhishthira, who was the son of Dharma, Yamaraj, he was being denied the throne. So when Dharma becomes prominent, as we learn in the 4th chapter, and there's all kinds of nasty people running things, then Krishna will come personally, especially in this age, or in previous ages he'll send his representatives to try to bring Dharma back in. And that's what this whole movement is. He came as Lord Chaitanya to spread the same thing. So that's what's happening here. And Arjuna is encouraged, you fight for the sake of fighting, for my sake, and everything will be fine, you know. And even if there's so many people killed, nobody dies. That was the whole point. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. If you just, that one line, if you just understand. With the death of the body, the soul does not die, no matter what kills the body. Old age, disease, death, accident, bullets. The body is a big machine. Eventually it breaks down due to one reason or another, but you will never die. So the question is, how can I act while it's in my control in such a way that I'll have the best future? And that's the whole idea of Bhakti Yoga. To actually succeed in life, the human life has a purpose, which is to go back home, back to Godhead, and not have to suffer again and again and again and again, birth, old age, disease, and death. It makes perfect sense, but you have to have faith, and you can't see it with your own vision. It's beyond. That's what transcendental means. Beyond the scope of our mind and senses. So therefore, there has to be faith, and that's what Prabhupada came to give, and still by his own presence in his books like this. Okay, we have time for one more. Now he's making a change here in text 39, and the rest of the chapter is extremely enlightening. It's all enlightening, but this is... All right, we're on the top page 105. I'll do it real slow. Let's see if we can hear. Eshate bihita sankye buddhir yoge tvimang shrinu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. That's just one note on the chanting of the mantras. Srila Prabhupada took so much effort here to give us the English equivalents and the phonetic spelling, so that we could actually sound out and chant the Sanskrit. There's power in that sound, even if you don't understand the meaning. But if you do understand the meaning, then you can see the wonderful poetry of Sanskrit. The very word Sanskrit means perfectly composed. That's what Sanskrit means. And the language is designed for the chanting, to be able to chant it. All the far meters and the things, it's meant for singing and poetry. And so we don't understand the meaning, so it's a little difficult, but it's worth making the effort to learn the art of chanting it, and it's not that difficult. I have recordings. I recorded the whole Bhagavad Gita. I can make it available, everything. I give it all away now. It's just all you have to do is want it. Okay, I'm not a perfect chanter, but I learned the art. Thus far, says Krishna, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. This is called the Sankhya, and that means dividing the body from the soul. In other words, describing, that's the Sankhya part, analyzing body and soul. Thus far, I have described this knowledge to you through the analytical study. Now listen, as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. This is the karma yoga aspect. O son of Prita, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. And this is another thing we should want to do, is that we're all bound up by a previous karma, but you can become free from that by Krishna consciousness. A purport. According to the Nirukti, that's a dictionary, Vedic dictionary, Sankhya means that which describes things in detail, and Sankhya refers to that philosophy which describes the real nature of the world. And yoga involves controlling the senses. Arjuna's proposal not to fight was based on sense gratification. Forgetting his prime duty, he wanted to cease fighting because he thought that by not killing his relatives and kinsmen, he would be happier than by enjoying the kingdom after conquering his cousins and brothers, the sons of Dhritarashtra. In both ways, the basic principles were for sense gratification. Happiness derived from conquering them and happiness derived by seeing kinsmen alive are both on the basis of personal sense gratification, even at a sacrifice of wisdom and duty. Krishna therefore wanted to explain to Arjuna that by killing the body of his grandfather, he would not be killing the soul proper. And Krishna, explained that all individual persons, including the Lord himself, are eternal individuals. They were individuals in the past, they were individuals in the present, and they will continue to remain individuals in the future, because all of us are individual souls eternally. We simply change our bodily dress in different manners, but actually we keep our individuality even after liberation from the bondage of material dress. An analytical study of the soul and the body has been very graphically explained by Lord Krishna, and this descriptive knowledge of the soul and the body from different angles of vision has been described here as Sankhya in terms of the Nirukti dictionary. Quite. This Sankhya has nothing to do with the Sankhya philosophy of the atheist Kapila. Long before the impostor Kapila's Sankhya, the Sankhya philosophy was expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the true Lord Kapila, the incarnation of Lord Krishna, who explained it to his mother Devahuti. It is clearly explained by him that the Purusha, or the Supreme Lord, is active and that he creates by looking over the Prakriti. This is accepted in the Vedas and in the Gita. The description in the Vedas indicates that the Lord glanced over the Prakriti or nature and impregnated it with atomic individual souls. All these individuals are working in the material world for sense gratification, and under the spell of material energy, they are thinking of being enjoyers. This mentality is dragged to the last point of liberation when the living entity wants to become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of Maya, or sense gratificatory illusion, and it is only after many, many births of such sense gratificatory activities that a great soul surrenders unto Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, thereby fulfilling the search after the ultimate truth. Arjuna has already accepted Krishna as his spiritual master by surrendering himself unto him. Shishyasteham sharimam tvam papannam. Consequently, Krishna will now tell him about the working process in buddhi yoga or karma yoga, or in other words, the practice of devotional service only for the sense gratification of the Lord. This buddhi yoga is clearly explained in chapter 10, verse 10, as being direct communion with the Lord, who is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart. But such communion does not take place without devotional service. One who is therefore situated in devotional or transcendental loving service to the Lord, or in other words, in Krishna consciousness, attains to this stage of buddhi yoga by the special grace of the Lord. The Lord says, therefore, that only to those who are always engaged in devotional service out of transcendental love does he award the pure knowledge of devotion in love. In that way, the devotee can reach him easily in the ever-blissful kingdom of God. Thus, the buddhi yoga mentioned in this verse is the devotional service of the Lord. And the word Sankhya mentioned herein has nothing to do with the atheistic Sankhya yoga enunciated by the impostor Kapila. One should not, therefore, misunderstand that the Sankhya yoga mentioned herein has any connection with the atheistic Sankhya. Nor did that philosophy have any influence during that time. Nor would Lord Krishna care to mention such godless philosophical speculations. Real Sankhya philosophy is described by Lord Kapila in Srimad Bhagavatam, but even that Sankhya has nothing to do with the current topics. Here, Sankhya means analytical description of the body and the soul. Lord Krishna made an analytical description of the soul just to bring Arjuna to the point of buddhi yoga or bhakti yoga. Therefore, Lord Krishna's Sankhya and Lord Kapila's Sankhya, as described in the Bhagavatam, are one and the same. They're all bhakti yoga. Lord Krishna said, therefore, that only the less intelligent class of men make a distinction between Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Sankhya Yoga pratigbala pravadanti pandita. That's in the 5th chapter. Of course, atheistic Sankhya Yoga has nothing to do with Bhakti Yoga, yet the unintelligent claim that the atheistic Sankhya Yoga is referred to in Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore understand that buddhi yoga means to work in Krishna consciousness in the full bliss and knowledge of devotional service. One who works for the satisfaction of the Lord only, however difficult such work may be, is working under the principles of buddhi yoga and finds himself always in transcendental bliss. By such transcendental engagement, one achieves all transcendental understanding automatically by the grace of the Lord, and thus his liberation is complete in itself, without his making extraneous endeavors to acquire knowledge. There is much difference between work in Krishna consciousness and work for fruitive results, especially in the matter of sense gratification, for achieving results in terms of family or material happiness. Buddhi yoga is therefore the transcendental quality of the work that we perform. Okay, we're going to read that same verse in purport tomorrow, because it requires more discussion than we have time for right now. So we'll pick that up tomorrow, and right now we're going to have a few minutes of reading of Krishna book. Do you believe I broke my case? I'm sitting here with my naked iPad. Okay, so where are we? Well, yeah, please. So, let's see. Could it be that we're on the 2nd chapter? Yeah. Yep. Okay. So, the demigods are praying to Krishna in the womb. At this time, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, accompanied by great sages like Narada and followed by many other demigods, invisibly appeared in the house of Kamsa. I think we read that already. So they go through, and there's a lot of prayers. Practically all material work is performed in ignorance, but because there are 3 qualities, sometimes the quality of ignorance is covered with goodness or passion. The taste of these material fruits is accepted through 5 senses. The 5 sense organs, through which knowledge is acquired, are subject to 6 kinds of whips: lamentation, illusion, infirmity, death, hunger, and thirst. So after these demigods pray for a long time, that's the 2nd chapter. And in the 3rd chapter, Krishna takes birth. So we're going to start there. Okay. Where is that chapter? On and on. Okay. The birth of Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that his appearance, birth, and activities are all transcendental, and that one who understands them factually becomes immediately eligible to be transferred to the spiritual world. For extra credit, verse is Janma Karma Evam Yoveti Tattvaha Chakvadeham. Text 9, Prabhupada quoted a lot. The Lord's appearance or birth is not like that of an ordinary man, who is forced to accept a material body according to his past deeds. The Lord's appearance is explained in the 4th chapter. He appears out of his own sweet pleasure. When the time was mature for the appearance of the Lord, the constellations became very auspicious. The astrological influence of the star known as Rohini was predominant. This star is considered very auspicious and is under the direct supervision of Brahma. According to the astrological conclusion, besides the proper situation of the stars, there are auspicious and inauspicious moments due to the different situations of the different planetary systems. At the time of Krishna's birth, the planetary systems were automatically adjusted so that everything became auspicious. At that time, in all directions, east, west, south, north, everywhere, there was an atmosphere of peace and prosperity. There were auspicious stars visible in the sky, and on the surface in all towns and villages and pasturing grounds, and within the minds of everyone there were signs of good fortune. The rivers were flowing full of waters, the lakes were beautifully decorated with lotuses, the forests were filled with beautiful birds and peacocks. All the birds within the forest began to sing with sweet voices, and the peacocks began to dance along with their consorts. The wind blew very pleasantly, carrying the aroma of various flowers, and the sensation of bodily touch was very pleasing. At home, the Brahmins, who were accustomed to offering sacrifices in the fire, found their homes very pleasant for offerings. Due to the disturbances created by demoniac kings, the sacrificial fire had been almost stopped in the houses of Brahmins, but now they could find the opportunity to start the fires peacefully. Being forbidden to offer sacrifices, the Brahmins had been very much distressed in mind, intelligence, and activities. But just on the point of Krishna's appearance, automatically their minds became full of joy because they could hear transcendental vibrations in the sky proclaiming the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The denizens of the Gandharva and Kinnara planets began to sing, and the denizens of Siddhaloka and planets of the Charanas began to offer prayers in the service of the Lord. In the heavenly planets, the angels and their wives, along with the Vidyadharas and their wives, began to dance. The great sages and demigods, being pleased, began to shower flowers. At the seashore, there was the sound of mild waves, and above the sea, there were clouds in the sky, which began to thunder very pleasingly. When things were adjusted like this, Lord Vishnu, who is residing within the heart of every living entity, appeared in the darkness of night as the Supreme Personality of Godhead before Devaki, who appeared as one of the demigoddesses. Now don't forget they're in the dungeon of Kamsa. The appearance of Vishnu at this time is like the rising of the full moon over the eastern horizon. The objection may be raised that since Krishna appeared on the 8th day of the waning moon, there couldn't be a rising full moon. In answer to this, it may be said that Krishna appeared in the dynasty which is in the hierarchy of the moon. Therefore, although the moon was incomplete on that night, because of the Lord's appearance in the dynasty wherein the moon is himself the original person, the moon was in an overjoyous condition. So by the grace of Krishna, he could appear just like a full moon. In an astronomical treatise by the name of Kamanikya, the constellations at the time of the appearance of Krishna are very nicely described. It is confirmed that the child born at that auspicious moment was the Supreme Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. Vasudeva saw that wonderful child born as a baby with 4 hands, holding conch shell, club, disc, and lotus, decorated with the mark of Shivats, wearing the jeweled necklace of Kaustubha stone, dressed in yellow silk, appearing dazzling like a bright blackish cloud, wearing a helmet bedecked with the Vaidurya stone, valuable bracelets, earrings, and similar other ornaments all over his body, and beautified by an abundance of hair on his head. Due to the extraordinary features of the child, Vasudeva was struck with wonder. How could a newly born child be so decorated? Vasudeva could therefore understand that Lord Krishna had now appeared, and he became overpowered by the occasion. Vasudeva very humbly wondered that although he was an ordinary living entity, conditioned by material nature, and was externally imprisoned by Kamsa, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, was appearing as a child in his home, exactly in his original position. No earthly child is born with 4 hands, decorated with ornaments and nice clothing, fully equipped with all signs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Over and over again, Vasudeva glanced at his child, and he considered how to celebrate auspicious moment. Generally, when a male child is born, he thought, people observe the occasion with jubilant celebrations, and in my home, although I am imprisoned, the Supreme Lord has taken birth. How many millions and millions of times should I be prepared to observe this auspicious ceremony? Okay, we'll pick that up tomorrow. Thank you for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now we'll have a nice secure time. Hold on a second. Go ahead. Yes, that's the moon, the Chandra dynasty and the Surya dynasty. Ramchandra appeared in the Surya dynasty, and Lord Krishna appeared in the Moon dynasty. Back there is Lord Chandra, the god of the moon, isn't it? You know, he came down. There's a genealogy I can show you in some of the Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhattacharya Satarine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadata Radha Asivasa Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Giri Hari, Radha Giri Hari Radhe. Jai Radha Giri Hari, Radha Giri Hari Radhe. Jayam Prabhupada Paramahamsa Bhagavad-gita Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON Devi Founder Sri Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayam Prabhupada Paramahamsa Bhagavad-gita Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Kund Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Navadvipur Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Brahma Mahi ki jai,
Jai.
Muna Mahi ki jai,
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki jai,
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki jai,
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki
Jai.
jai, Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada
Ki
ki
jai.
jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda
Ki
ki
jai.
jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shri Guru and
Hare Krishna.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Your name?
Ryan.
Ryan Prabhu.
Yeah.
You live in the temple.
Yes, I have. Which one? 16 rounds, computer, remember when we started collaborating?
I remember that magazine, yeah?
Yes. I was doing some
You should
edited
stay here with
journalistic photographic
No, I
insights.
don't need, I need to go back, I start school tomorrow.
Hopefully we
Okay.
can look and talk
See you
about
next Sunday.
probably
Yeah,
doing it
Sundays,
again.
Sundays and Mondays I'll be
Relive in
there.
it, reinstill in it, and
Okay, I'll
re-inspire.
stay for you until you.
Oh, did I?
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so
That's
much.
fine,
I just
fly to take a match.
Okay, right.
look forward to.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, good to see you.
Good to see you.
How are you? Hare Krishna.
Tina, you want a little something?
I'm just waiting for her because she doesn't want to eat on her own.
6 months?
Is that?
So I'll just wait.
I think so.
Okay,
Well,
would you want some?
have
Shot?
a whole
So
lot of
here,
visual space.
we got spoon.
So I was thinking in the long run of things.
And how about a
Like
little
very
cake?
Krishna oriented.
Are you good?
That's always done as we talk. It's funny to see you and your devotion.
Is it too much for that? Take some off.
You gonna take your son?
I generally would, but
What she means is
you know what? I just had 2 pints of ice cream
I understood like
and 2 red Bulls.
Yes, you can take it home.
And I have
Not a problem. I'm not worried about this milk though, taking that home.
Jelly
But this you can take home very healthily like this.
Oh, you can just go to a small plate, huh?
I should. Okay, yeah, I'll do that because maybe that would diminish my intake of.
Right, don't eat.
It's 10 feet away.
Yeah,
It's like, you didn't know, yeah?
Okay.
That would diminish my intake of the jelly bellies.
Easily.
You're right.
Yeah.
Feels like some stuff.
And I asked him if he wanted.
I know he changed my mind. He said I could take a small.
You can take whatever you.
Maybe one of these and just a silver one.
Small one?
Yes, please.
This is, you know, cooked, he cooked.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. I reckon by the sight of it.
This looks like a little bit different than we usually cook.
Yeah, that was broccoli.
Oh, so you may qualify.
Oh, is that what it is?
You may qualify.
This is my fault here.
The color, the color. It's funny. Very cataloging. Like we can probably put that in
Oh, yeah,
the
from
front.
Brazil.
So you're
lines of
brand new.
Some 60 rounds.
Yeah.
If I will learn like for 10 years.
Right?
No.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I shall see you again.
That's why you're English.
Okay, my
Never seen.
Okay.
Or whatever. You can
I'm right next door,
Go ahead.
but I wanted to enjoy the temple and pay my respects.
Okay.
And appreciate that myself a
Okay,
little bit.
now we're gonna go on to
Yes,
the next
I'll
one.
come back tomorrow for some service.
Why not?
Why not?
Would you like some? No. Where's our usual, would you like some? Please come around here. We got a plate here for you. Would you like some what we call sabji? This is a little vegetable.
My privilege. Hare Krishna.
Sorry. In America, 3 years.
So you were doing some pots, huh?
But few months ago.
Yeah.
When I leave here.
Those pots. Is that okay? You would not like more? Is that
So do
okay?
you,
Have a
do
little
you
milk.
study here or do you teach?
Late work.
Regular milk with a little sugar.
I work as a server in a restaurant.
Yeah,
As a
that's
waitress.
Oh, perfect.
Not tonight. Anyone else? I think we ran out of customers. Hina, you're not?
I'm fine.
You're
Thank you.
okay? All right, I'm gonna just taste this. Something special. Where's the music tonight, man?
Yeah, where's the music? Hare Krishna. I had nice Hare Krishna picture.
Are you trying to bring more women?
I don't need much tonight.
Are you trying to bring more women? You say that as a joke.
It was a joke. Then I brought them all in. I used to come quite often.
Because there's a lot of men here. Too much.
Yeah, maybe I can take it.
Subject. Kale.